Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Lisa, and in this video we're going to talk through how I've completed these two beautiful birds. In the description below I'll put a list of the paper and pencils and all of the colours that I've used to complete this one. If you like this video, remember to check out my other Sun Conure tutorial, and if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. So let's get started. So this is the reference photo I used for this one. I just got this from Pixabay for free. I'll put a link below to the picture so you can have a try of this one if you like. So as usual with birds and animals like this, I always start with the eye. The main thing I do is go in with the colours that you can see underneath the eye. So in this one there was a lot of purples and blues. So I started by using the sky blue and violet pencil and then blend it down with the warm grey one and then go over with the dark sepia to darken it right up. For the skin around the eye, I used the cold grey one and started to build in some of the blue and purple tones just really lightly. So the sky blue and the violet colour, and then I blend it down with the Holbein white waxy pencil, which makes it sort of look smooth and opaque. And then you can go in with the blues and purples, and then just really lightly with the dark sepia just around the little wrinkles that you can see, making sure that you have a really sharp pencil. So for the feathers on this one, I know that I wanted them to be very bright. So usually with other birds and animals, I'll use like a warm grey one or a cold grey one sort of base, but that does unsaturate your colours and will dull them down a little bit. So I knew that I wanted the yellow in the bird to be really punchy and really bright, so I didn't use any sort of cold greys or warm greys for the base for the feathers. I just went straight in with a light cadmium yellow, which is a very bright yellow, but we'll talk more about the feathers shortly. So for the beak on this one, I went in with my cold grey one, mapped down all of the darker areas that you can see and just put a base layer down. Then I went over lightly with the sky blue just to get a bit of colour in there. And then I went over where there's sort of those whiter sections in the beak with the Holbein soft white pencil. So this will put down a wax resist, and then when you go over with your darker colours like the dark sepia, Prussian blue, purple violet, all of the darker colours, it will make sure that the pencil doesn't go in those areas, and then you can use like a scalpel or a slice tool just to pull up the colours that are over the Holbein pencil, and then it'll make it sort of look nice and crisp. So you do sort of want to do the negative space method where you're not going over the lighter colours with your darker colours, but if you do, then at least you have the Holbein there and you can just pick it up after you've put it down and get in all of those really little details in the beak that you can see. So back to the feathers, the colour that I used was the light cadmium yellow as the base. I'd put that down and then go over with the same light cadmium yellow in the darker sections and start to put in some feather lines and make it a little bit darker where you can see the darker ripples in the feathers. Then I'd work my way up to the darker colours. So I'd start using some of the dark cadmium yellow, then the dark chrome yellow, doing the same sort of process. So making sure to pay attention to the reference photo where you can see the darker areas in the feathers and start to work those darker colours in. I would also go back over with the light cadmium yellow to start to saturate the colours a little bit more, because the more sort of orange colours that you put in, you'll start to see that the yellow isn't as yellow as what it was originally, because you're starting to put darker colours around it. For the green and blue colours in the feathers, I used the permanent green, the Prussian blue, the sky blue, and the cobalt green, which is sort of the bluey green sort of sea colour. I also did go over with the Holbein soft white pencil, which makes it sort of opaque and puts in the lighter sections you can see. And then I'd start to go in with the Prussian blue, a little bit of dark sepia, but trying not to put too much into the feathers because it may make it look a little bit muddy. So for the feathers around the eyes of the bird and around sort of the darker section, The colour that I used was the pale Geranium Lake. This is sort of the red-orange colour, and I use this a lot around the eye. And then where it is the darkest, I use some of the dark red and Alizarin Crimson colour, which is the darker red sort of colours. It's just important to pay attention to your reference photo and start to build up the colours where you can see them, and start with the lighter colours and move up to the darker colours. Remember as well to work in the direction that the fur is going. So around the eye, around the beak, you can see it sort of sticking up at different angles, especially on the second bird. So making sure to pay attention to where the feathers are going and flicking your pencil strokes in those ways, and building up the lighter colours to the darker colours. So in the very corner of the beaks and right up against the beak, I would always use the dark red and then the pale Geranium Lake, and then build the pale Geranium Lake out into the yellow feathers to blend it out. Also remember with the beak texture that it is quite tricky, and it does take a lot of layers and does take a while to build up. So don't just start putting it in and think that it's not working. You need to sort of work at it and just go very, very slowly. Remember to use your white Holbein pencil or a white waxy pencil. That will help you get the highlights on the beak that makes it look nice and shiny. And then put the dark sepia right up against those colors to make it sort of stand out. And also using a slice tool or craft knife to pull away some of the colors so it looks nice and crisp next to the dark colors in the beak. So then it was time to put in the bark texture, and I knew that I wanted it to be an 8x8 inch portrait, so I got a old frame that I've had sort of lying around and just got out the insert to see how big the branch is going to be at the bottom. Then what I do is just measure it out, and then I put some washi tape around the bottom just so that when I take up the tape it'll be nice and crisp and ready for framing. I always make sure to do a little bit more of the border than what is expected, because if a client buys the piece and then it's too short in the frame that they're going to get, it's going to be a bit disappointing. So just making sure to make it a little bit bigger, but you don't want to go over too much as well, because then it just takes too long to do the border that you're not going to see anyway. So for the bark texture on this one, I use the majority of the colours that you can see in the birds, because you sort of want it to be a cohesive piece and all come together. I started off with the base of the warm grey one, then I started to glaze in some of the sky blue, the purple violet, and then go over that again with the warm grey one. Start to get darker with the warm grey 3, again glaze in more sky blue and purple violet. So it's just about building up a whole heap of layers and getting it darker as you go. Then I started to build in some of the warm grey 4 and some of the dark sepia, where you can see those really dark shadows in the bark as well. For the sort of little white areas, I went in and just dotted down a little bit of the Holbein white pencil. But if you don't have this as well, you can also just go in maybe with an eraser or a kneaded eraser and just pull up little bits of the texture, and it will sort of make it look like there are little bits of highlights in the bark as well. But again, with this sort of texture, it's just a matter of going in and building up those layers. So for the under section where it's a little bit yellow, a little bit orange, I glazed in some of the dark cadmium yellow, the dark chrome yellow, and I even put in a little bit of burnt umber as well, which is a dark brown colour. But this sort of texture, like I said, does take a long time. It's just about being patient, building them up, and for this section I didn't even worry about following the reference photo 100%. I just sort of went with how I felt about it. Then it was time to peel off the tape and then cut it to size. So this is the final result. I really hope that you like this video. Remember to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below if this was helpful or what you would like to see in the future. Keep drawing, guys. Thanks. Bye.